Hello, beautiful one. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome in. I am back in this park. I visited here a couple weeks ago and wasn't able to stay and paint. So I'm carved out some time this week and we're back in this beautiful place. And I'm painting a cozy fall landscape. Now, I want to tell you something about plein air painting that most people won't tell you. And that is, I had this preconceived notion in my head that if you were painting outside, you had to paint what was in front of you. And you had to be accurate at it. And I released myself of those thoughts one day, and I just painted outside. I brought everything I needed. I sat under the shade of the tree and I painted what I wanted to paint. And it was lovely and so freeing. And ever since that epiphany, I have been coming and painting in the park. So, if you have preconceived notions of how and when and where to paint, maybe this is a little sign for you to let go of those preconceived notions, put them aside, and just enjoy. I wanted to talk a little bit about my canvas that I'm using today. I have primed it with a color, a very warm color, which lends itself to a cozy fall painting. And a lot of people do this. They tint their canvas, one, so that the white is not so intimidating, and it's easier to get coverage, and it also unifies your painting. But what people don't really talk about is how it changes your color. So every color that goes on this canvas is now tinted by this orangey brown color. And so when you mix your colors, it's very important to keep that in mind. And it might take a couple tries to counteract that color and get the color that you want on there. So for example, if I put a yellow on top of this color, it's already mixed with orange. So I almost have to put a white on top of it to get it to come across as a light yellow. So just something to keep in mind. But I thought that the color in the background really lended itself to the feel of this painting. It almost felt like you were on a fall evening looking at a sunset over a field. And I thought it lended itself perfectly. But I did struggle with trying to get the colors to come across the way I wanted them to. And you will see me sometimes go back in and wipe something away and try again. I will mix a color and I will put one stroke on the canvas. And if it isn't the color that I envisioned, because once you get it on the canvas, it's much different than when it's on your palette, I will try again and I'll put another swatch. And if it's wrong, I'll go back and wipe all those off until I get the right one. So I don't commit to a color I don't really want. And I think that's key. So if you really like the look of this type of underpainting and warming or cooling of the color under a painting, and old masters used to do this all the time, and I studied this in a painting class in college. We had to do a complete understudy where we did just a black and white tonal painting in these colors, in the warmish brownish tones, and then we used glazes to go back in and add color. And it was very eye-opening. And even with the glazes, you sometimes can't predict how they look over top of the toned brownish sepia tone painting. But it is a look, and it's a very appealing look in my mind. I think it lends itself to being almost antique-y or vintage inspired, and I really love that look. I want to do some landscapes coming up that are very inspired by old masters, very dark and moody. I just have an urge within me that I need to make these landscapes. And so I'm thinking about doing some really tiny little landscapes. I've got a bunch of frames that I have sourced through a lot of different avenues: yard sales, thrift stores, antique shops, you name it. I have sourced a bunch, even Amazon. And the other day I was in Marshall's and found a whole little compilation of tiny frames. So I'm really excited to hopefully bring that to fruition this November and offer it up in December. Now this right here, I almost wish I would have left the painting as is, because it's so pretty. I love it so much, but I didn't. I went on because I do have an image that I am working from, and so I had that as a goal. But sometimes I almost think you should stop and just walk away from your painting because wow, was that gorgeous. And it does, I do like the end results, I do like it, but looking back over this footage, I was like, dang, I really liked that one. I don't know if you ever do that, but sometimes you just, that's one good thing about recording yourself painting, because sometimes you don't see it in the moment, but looking back over the footage, you can see glaring mistakes, or even not glaring mistakes, but just decisions that went awry, the decisions that could have went a different way. And the good thing about painting is it's never too late. You can always change it. You just have to have the courage to change it. And that's what I tell new painters all the time. It's not about being perfect or correct or making a beautiful painting. It's about having the courage to change what you don't like, even if everybody else is telling you it looks beautiful. If there's something inside you that's telling you it's wrong and you want to fix it or you want to change it, have that courage to step up and change it. Because in the end, you are the only one you're painting for. And as long as you are working your muse and satisfying your curiosities and letting it, whatever the divine is that flows through us to make art, then you're doing your job. You're completing your soul contract, let's say, if you want to go that far. So that is my advice on working on a tone painting and working in plein air, which just means outside. Now, if you work alla prima, which is what I'm doing today also, which is wet and wet, and that means you just work through one session with paint until the painting is complete. And sometimes when I do this, I can get there in one session, and sometimes I can't. It just depends on, how the painting's going, which you can't ever control, really. It just depends on how your flow state is and how much you let go. And, when I first started working with oil paints, or the water soluble oil paints, I had a really hard time working alla prima because it can tend to just disappear on the canvas. You put a color on and then you put more color on top of it and it just disappears. It just kind of fades into each other. And it took me a long time to understand why. And that is because you need to work really, really lightly on the layers below so that you have that thickness to go on top. And my other suggestion is never add water at this stage. Never dilute your paints unless you're using a medium, because the water will just make your colors completely translucent, in my experience. So we are getting towards the end of this painting and the end of this video, and I want to thank you for being here and listening to my thoughts. I hope they were helpful. I was going to use this video and just have it be silent with music, but I thought I wanted to get better at sharing my thoughts and sharing my experience so that these videos have more value. And so if you got value out of this video and you enjoyed it and my thoughts were helpful, please leave me a comment. Excuse me. Please leave me a comment. I would love to hear your thoughts and what you think about plein air painting and alla prima and toning your canvas and painting outside, all the things. I just love talking about art. So don't be shy. Leave me a comment, leave me a message. And I will leave you here. There is an end shot so you can see the final painting up close. But other than that, I will see you next week. We are going to go to another park next week and we're painting another landscape. So I hope you come back and join in on that one.